So, welcome back. So I guess that this is our first Fantasy Premier League video in the series. So we just finished match week 2, and this is how the table currently stands. And as you can see, some people are doing really well, and others not so much. I'm going to have a quick look through a couple of the teams. We're going to look through the results of the game week 2, and we're going to look at match week 3's upcoming fixtures, and we're going to compare how I think people will do, how I think teams will perform in terms of the games and the matchups that they have coming up. So we're going to start at the bottom. We're going to start with Stephen Baker's Fantasy Premier League team. So he went with Ederson in goal, Trippier, Gabriel, Gvardiol, Virgil van Dijk, Moses Caicedo, Harvey Barnes, Martinelli, Tonali, Jackson, and Haaland. So, as you can see from the points that he's picked up, not a singular player in that team has got more than 6 points, which is not a great point. Not a great start to the season. You know, it's not a single player in that team currently has double figures in a match weekend. Not even on the bench. So it's not the greatest of starts, but as I've been told this morning, it's not about where you start, it's about where you finish. So, back into the league, we next up we have Jack Thompson at Just Fun. We started with Wes Foderingham in goal. He has Ben White, John Egan, Anil Ahmedhodzic, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Harvey Barnes, Casemiro, Moussa Diaby, Phil Foden, Erling Haaland, and Alexander Isak in his team. It's a pretty decent. It's a decent starting 11. Maybe barring a couple of players, it's a decent starting 11. Just not very many people performed this weekend. Foden had a good weekend, grabbing that assist for the Alvarez goal. A couple of points for the Sheffield United defenders. Ben White had a good weekend, keeping a clean sheet. Haaland didn't score or assist, so didn't get many points this season, but he is a captain, so that gets him double points, I believe. I believe that's how it works. So, back into the league. The next team up is Den Blairds by Bobby Cabon, who went with Ramsdale in goal and Estepinian in defence, which is a good shout, to be fair, putting Estepinian in your defences. As Brighton had a very good weekend, winning 4-1 away to Wolves. He'd have got more points if he'd have kept a clean sheet, but he did get himself a goal, which is quite magical considering he doesn't really score many goals. Ben Chilwell, Gabriel didn't have the greatest weekend. Bruno Fernandes missed a really easy opportunity to put his team level, I believe, at the time. Might have even been in front. Anyway, he had a beautiful opportunity to put his team ahead, or give him a goal at least. And if anybody saw his Rabona cross, it was pretty magical, to be fair. Saka and Rashford, alright weekends. Rodrigo not bad. Haaland, Pedro didn't do very well, and Alexander Isak as well didn't do that well. Moving into our next team upwards, we have Ollie Maximen by Jack Ellis, who went with Leno, Robertson, Virgil van Dijk, Akanji, Trippier, Diaby, Rodrigo, Saka, Eze, Haaland, and Watkins. Captain in Haaland and vice captain in Virgil van Dijk. As you can see from that, not very many players got very many points, but as a collective, every player did get points within his team, taking him up to 35 for the weekend. On to Jababy by Shea Maron, who went with Becker in goal, Trippier, Estepinian, Zinchenko, Alexander-Arnold, Rashford, Barnes, Bruno Fernandes, Matoma, Haaland, and Darwin Nunez. So Matoma's a great shout, as Matoma if anybody saw that goal that he scored at Wolves, incredible. He takes it past 4 players. It makes it look easy. It's not easy. He's got really good ball control, close control. He takes it past 4 players, puts it past a goalkeeper. Wonderful solo goal. Definitely, for me, I'm going to put it in my top 3 goals of the weekend. Might even snatch number 1, to be honest. Estepinian, as aforementioned, also picked up 11 points, which is brilliant. Areola picked up 10 points, but because he's on the bench, I'm pretty sure that doesn't count towards Shane's overall points. And he got 38 this week. So moving up the table, we move on to Payne in Diaz, which is quite a clever name, to be honest. I quite like that, from Lewis Oxley, who went with Turner in goal, Chilwell, Estepinian, Gabriel, Rashford, Bruno Fernandes, Mitoma, Saka, Martinelli, Haaland, and João Pedro in his team. Again, as aforementioned, Estepinian and Mitoma both got quite a lot of points, which boosts him up to 40 in total. The only difference between his team and the last one we looked at are a couple of players in midfield and defence that also picked up multiple points, including the goalkeeper who picked up 2 points. So, moving on. We move on to Bosnian Maldini from Alex Gill, who went with Onana, Chilwell, Gabriel, Estepinian, Mitoma, Rashford, Fernandes, Rodrigo, Saka, Haaland, Darwin Núñez. As you can see, there's a pattern starting to develop where people are going with Haaland as their captain. Which makes a lot of sense because Haaland is likely to get more goals than anybody else in the league, especially judging on last season or any previous season he's had in professional football where he always scores a lot of goals. And he gets a fair few assists as well, so he's most likely to get your points, which makes a lot of sense. So, looking at our next team, he got 41 points. Is Aussie Stadium Builder by Aussie Stadium Builder, who went with Martinez in goal, which was good because Martinez kept a clean sheet against Everton in that 4-0 victory for Aston Villa. I think it's also, aside from Watkins, the first Aston Villa player we've seen in a team. It's definitely the first time we've seen Martinez as goalkeeper. He went with Trippier, Ben White, Pau Torres, who is another Aston Villa player in his team, who got 6 points, Lewis Dunk, Mohamed Salah, Pascal Gross, Jensen, Morgan Gibbs-White, Erling Haaland and Ollie Watkins, which is quite a good team actually. You got some players that are more likely to perform, such as Salah and Haaland, Trippier you'd probably expect, but he's gone with a couple of players that you wouldn't really see in many teams, such as Pascal Gross. I think that's the first time we've seen him, as well as Lewis Dunk. Morgan Gibbs-White, I'm pretty sure it's the first time we come across him along this video, and definitely Martinez. And I can see that he's an Aston Villa fan, which is why he has so many Aston Villa players in his team, but they are still good shouts. He has picked up 45 points in total. So moving up the league, we get on to HTFGIJYFX by Lewis Riggs, who also has 45 points but has gone with a different team, with Edison in goal, Alexander-Arnold, Ben Chilwell, Kieran Trippier, Pervis Estupinian, Harvey Barnes, Bukayo Saka, Rodrigo, Martin Odegaard, Erling Haaland and Alexander Isak. Chuck Waymaker on the bench, who also actually got a really good goal for Chelsea, if anybody's seen that, away to West Ham. But because he's on the bench, obviously doesn't pick up that many points. Doesn't pick up any points for the team, sorry, as well as Semenyo and Areola. But he has picked up 45 points for the weekend. Moving on to the next team, it is my team. It's Phantom Mints from Phantom Mints. I am in 3rd place as it stands. And the team that I've gone with is Edison in goal, Trent Alexander-Arnold, William Saliba, Gvardiol, Anel Ahmedhodzic, Mitoma, Gibbs-White, Eze, Odegaard, Haaland and Jackson. I'm thinking about potentially transferring Benny out for another player and then putting him into the team instead of Jackson. I guess we'll see. It might be something I do, it might not. Anyway, I got enough points for Odegaard and Mitoma's performances, as well as double points for having Haaland as my captain. Gvardiol and Saliba had decent games, and I've gone with a midfield pairing of Gibbs-White and Eze, who aren't very likely to pick up many points overall in the season, but are more likely to be standout players for their team, which is why I've gone with them. So, moving on, we go on to Asian Man by Patrick Malone, who has Ramsdale, Estepinian, Edmund Hertz, Virgil van Dijk, Ruben Diaz, Rodrigo, Mbuemo, Saka, Erdegaard, Wilson and Haaland in his team. Now Mbuemo is a great shout. He picked up a lot of points this weekend and he's a very good performer for Brentford. He always seems to do very well every time I see him play. Estepinian, again as for mentioned, picked up 11 points in defence and 11 points for Erdegaard, which is enough to secure second place as of now for Patrick. And Tayyab Iqbal, with It's Coming Home, gets 73 points this season so far for placing Onana in goal, Alexander Arnold, Gabriel, Estepinian, Colwill, Mbuemo, Salah, Erdegaard, Martinelli, Visa and Watkins. Now I think this is the first time I've seen Visa in a team and it's a good shout. He seems to be the replacement for Ivan Toney and he's definitely where the goals are going to come from for Brentford. Might be worth putting him into other people's teams. And Mbuemo again, 16 points. Erdegaard 11, Estepinian 11, Vista 11, 10 for Salah. That's 5 players in that team who all got more than 10 points. Putting him on 73 for the week and in first place. Now remember, it didn't start on week 1 because I didn't have the league up and running in time. So it started from League 2. I'm currently 18 points behind the leader, but I'm 10 points clear of 4th place. If anybody else would like to join the league, I will leave a code link in the description. As long as you register your team before the upcoming week, your upcoming week results will count. Now we're going to move on to the points given and the games that were played. So we started with Nottingham Forest versus Sheffield United on Friday night. And personally, as a Sheffield United fan, I didn't go to this one, but I did watch it with a couple of friends online. And Awoniyi scored pretty early on from pretty poor defending. Last week when we played Palace, we conceded because the left backs, or the left-hand side, just didn't really commit when it came to closing down crosses, and that's how we conceded against Crystal Palace. And then on Friday, we had exactly the same problem. Max Lowe misses a ball, but then also doesn't push out to the player Aurier, I believe it was, who got the assist for both goals, I think. Oh yeah, it says that Aurier got 2 assists, so he doesn't push out either and doesn't close him down. I mean, it's a free header for Awoniyi, so you know that's a pretty simple start. And again, later on, Larouci, who came on to replace Max Lowe, doesn't push out. I kind of understand with him that he doesn't push out because he's also marking somebody else. If he pushes out to Aurier, then he leaves his own player, which means he's opening a lot of space. I kind of understand it, but there should have been somebody on that side closing down Aurier. And it was a brilliant cross. It was actually a beautiful cross, probably one of the best crosses of the season so far. It was perfectly to Chris Wood, who puts it into the back of the net, make it 2-1. But what about that goal from Gustavo Harmer? His debut after signing for 17 million euros from Coventry. I don't know what the actual transfer fee was. I looked on Transfer Market, it was like 17.3 17.3 million euros or something. So yeah, I couldn't tell you like what the actual conversion to sterling was. Anyway, on making his debut, just after half time, he gets the ball on the edge of the box and he blasts it into the far top corner, curling inside of a foot shot. And again, and I don't feel like I'm being biased as a Sheffield United fan, but I think it's easy to say that should be top 3 goals of the weekend. I think Mitoma's beats it. Mitoma's is just, it's magical, isn't it? It's a great run. You got to give it to Mitoma, but you got to put Harmers in there as well. I don't know who else I'd put in there. I think Chukwuemeka scored quite a good goal, if I'm honest. So, moving on to the next game, we had Fulham versus Brentford. Now, Brentford won 3-0, and then Mbeumo got 2 goals, and Vissa got 1. So, like our current leader in our division, has both of them in his team. Fantastic for him, as Brentford had a great weekend, winning 3-0 on the first game of the season away at Fulham, and Mbeumo from midfield getting 2, Vissa up front getting 1. It's a great start. Liverpool conceded early on against Bournemouth, as Semenyo scored from I believe it was from a mistake from Liverpool. It bounced off of Alexander Arnold's leg. The shot was saved or blocked or whatever. It bounced back to Semenyo, who scored the goal. It was a well taken goal. Shot to Diaz and Salah all getting on the score sheet as Liverpool turn it around to win 3-1. So if you got any of those in your team, well done. We move on to Wolves versus Brighton. Now Brighton just went 4-0 up. And I haven't seen anybody with Solly March in the team. But I think considering how he played last season, and if he can keep that up this season, if anyone has got him, he's definitely going to be a dark horse to get a lot of points. Estepinian, I don't feel like he'll score very many goals through the season. As a fullback, it's not like him to score goals, but he found himself in the position at the weekend and he did get his name on the score sheet. However, he may get you a fair few clean sheets, or a couple of assists from time to time. Matoma's another one that's quite a magical player, and I think he's very likely to get assists and goals this season. And Chan did get a consolation goal for Wolves later on. But what I feel like Wolves have as a problem so far this season is they create a lot of opportunities. Like I watched that game live against Man United. Well, I say live, I watched it against Man United. And they created all of the chances in the game. They just didn't get the look of finishing the ball. They just couldn't finish. And I think that's what's really going to hold them back this season, because they played the same against Brighton. Maybe not as many opportunities, but they did have a fair few shots, just couldn't score. It's just one of them things, isn't it? We just can't score goals. So that's where we seem to struggle. Moving on to Spurs, we had 2 goals in this game. Now, one of the goals was by Papsar, which I believe is his first goal since signing, or his second goal or something. He hasn't scored many, but he did score the opening goal. And to be fair, again from watching the highlights, I feel like I'm not putting either of these players at fault, because it does bounce off of Martinez as it finds its way into the back post for Papsar to finish. Nobody closes down the player who is running in, to be fair, to make the cross. But Mason Mount is marking Papsar at the time of the cross coming in, and Sarr just peels off of Mount's shoulder, and Mount doesn't track him back. He just stops and watches. Casemiro does realise once he's in the middle that he's going to get to the back post, and he puts in a little bit of effort, but it's a little bit too late, and that results in the goal. And the second goal for Spurs again came from a deflection. It was a low-driven cross in towards Davis, who got the very slightest of touches as it bounced onto the right foot of Lisandro Martinez, who, in my opinion, couldn't do anything about it. Because of that slight touch from Davis, it threw him off guard. He didn't have enough time to react, and he just sliced it into his own net. So Spurs start with a home win this season, first win of the season, I believe. Yeah, we drew 2-2 at Brentford and then a home win. So everybody's saying that Spurs would struggle for goals without Harry Kane. Maybe they'll do better. If you remember Spurs when we had Bale, that's where all the goals came from. Everything seemed to go through Bale, and then we sold him, bought a few players, and became a better team without him. Maybe they'll do the same without Kane. Maybe history will repeat itself. Now we move on to Man City versus Newcastle, and again, I guess you could argue that Alvarez scored one of the goals of the weekend. Maybe that should be top 3. Alvarez, Harmer and Matoma for goals of the weekend. He gets the assist from Foden, who drives it low, cuts it back. He gets a touch on it, he turns with the ball and he hammers it into the top corner. And yeah, Pope gets a touch to it, but it's not enough to keep it out. Personally, I've always felt like, as a goalkeeper, because I played as a goalkeeper myself, I've always felt like if you can get a hand to it, you should be saving it. And if you're going to get a hand to it and it's going to go in the net anyway, then you have to put that on the keeper, really. It is a good finish, but as I say, the keeper does get a touch on it. And for me, from a critical analysis point of view, as being a goalkeeper when I was younger, I was always taught if you can get your hand to it, you can save it. And if you get your hand to it and it still goes in, it's on you. So, sorry Newcastle fans, but I have to put Pope at fault for that one. Moving on to the Sunday fixtures. Now, Aston Villa decimated Everton. Everton, again, seem to have that same issue that Wolves have, where they just can't score goals. Now, they played in their first game at home to Fulham and they lost 1-0. And to be fair to Everton in that first game, they were very unlucky because they did have a penalty. They had a disallowed goal, which shouldn't have been disallowed, for a foul on Leno, which wasn't a foul on Leno. He clattered straight into Tarkowski. He took Tarkowski out while he caught the ball. It wasn't Tarkowski's fault. He sort of landed on top of him, dropped the ball. Referee gave a free kick. Never in a million years is that a free kick, and the goal should have counted. But as it stands, because that goal didn't count, Everton have currently not scored any and have conceded 5. So we got absolutely annihilated at Aston Villa with some good goals from McGinn and Duran. Some really poor defending for both Duran and Bailey's goal. Douglas Luiz got a penalty, which a controversial one again. I think it was a penalty, but I don't think there was much contact. The fashion it was given, it's just a little bit of a strange decision from the referee. But I guess if it's a penalty, it's a penalty. So that's Everton's problem. And I know we've got a couple of big games coming up against relegation rivals such as Wolves and ourselves, Sheffield United. So maybe that's where we might start picking up points. We move on to the London derby between West Ham and Chelsea, as Agard scored a goal to get the hosts ahead when he got the header at the back post. He wasn't picked up by Gallagher. He wasn't picked up by I can't remember who the other player there was. He wasn't picked up anyway. He had a free header. It was a goal. Chuck Wamaker again, as I say, did get the ball from Emerson, and he got a good shot off in the end. To be honest, it wasn't really like straight in the corner of the net, although it did bend on the inside of his foot. But it was quite a powerful shot, which I think just caught the keeper off guard, resulting in the goal. It was a good finish. Enzo Fernandez missed a penalty, pretty poor penalty in the end. And I know there's some Chelsea fans out there who'll argue that the keeper did come off of his line just before the penalty was taken. But I guess if you're a penalty taker and you run up to the ball and you stutter at the last second, I know as a goalkeeper, if you're already half into that dive, because keepers aren't meant to move until the ball's been kicked, but if you're already half moving in that situation, you can't stop yourself from moving. If a player taking the penalty stutters, then I don't think it should be taken again. I know there's some people who might argue it should be, but I disagree. I've always felt like they say penalties are 50-50s, and I feel like it's really not. It's more like a 70-30 in terms of a striker. Maybe even an 80-20, especially when you put in terms of the fact that a goalkeeper literally isn't allowed to move until the ball's been kicked, which is a pretty stupid rule if you ask me. Because if it's right in the corner, he's never going to save it because he can't get there quick enough. If he's really tall, he can't get down quick enough. If he's not tall enough, he can't reach out enough. And if a player's still allowed to stutter, for me, a goalkeeper should be allowed to put him off, as that's the same situation from a striker's point of view. Stuttering or wobbling will put a goalkeeper off. I think a goalkeeper should still be allowed to put a striker off, but that's just my opinion. Hey ho, what can you do? Tomato, tomato, I guess. Or just scrap when it comes to penalties. Strikers aren't allowed to stutter like keepers aren't allowed to move, whichever you like. Anyway, Areola did make a good penalty save from that. Ward-Prowse got a couple of assists. Antonio scored a really good solo goal, to be fair. Again, nobody closed him down. It's a great ball into him from Ward-Prowse. Nobody closed him down, and he just bangs it into the bottom corner. I understand with the Ward-Prowse transfer not going through until at some point last week why a lot of people haven't got him in their team, but again, he might be worth putting in teams, because West Ham, for me, I think will do better than last season. They'll finish top 10 or in and around that sort of area. He's the man who's going to get the assists. He's good at set pieces. He scores a few goals. He's probably the best free kick taker in the league. And then Paqueta got the penalty at the other end, and he scored that again. Good penalty. And then on Monday night we had Crystal Palace against Arsenal, and Ødegaard scored again from a penalty spot. And I can't remember whether it was a penalty or not. I can't remember what happened. I'm going to say in my head I thought it was a penalty, but as I say, I can't remember. Tomiyasu got sent off, and again, it's quite a controversial one, like with the McAllister one at Liverpool. I think for the McAllister one at Liverpool against was it Bournemouth? I think the reason he got sent off was more for the malice in the challenge. It wasn't malicious intent. He didn't try to injure a player or anything, but with raised studs into the ankle, I kind of understand to an extent why the the referee would look at that and say that's a red card. But I still feel like it's a little bit harsh. But with Tomiyasu one, I don't understand it. I don't understand what he's being sent off for. It's the most minimal contact ever, and he gets sent off for it. I don't understand it. Refereeing this season, officials' decisions this season so far have been atrocious. Anana having a boxing match with a Wolves player, I just don't understand how that's never a penalty. I don't understand why it's not a red card, if I'm honest. I don't understand why the manager gets booked for arguing about it. As I say, controversial sending offs. There's been a few controversial decisions. Fortunately for us, so far, because we all thought Sheffield United would come into the season and it'd be VAR this, VAR that, VAR this, VAR that. We'd be constantly under the cosh of VAR, and it hasn't really intervened with our season thus far. We are only 2 games in, but so far there's been a lot of controversial decisions, and none of them have included us, which I'm quite thankful for. Anyway, looking at the upcoming fixtures. So if we go to the top, we have Chelsea versus Luton this Friday night. Now, Luton didn't play Burnley this weekend as they still have some ground issues about getting fixed. And again, I know a lot of people are looking at that and saying, oh, why aren't we getting a fine for this, blah, blah, blah. We've had plenty of time to sort it out. If you've ever been to Luton or you've ever seen their stadium, you will know how difficult it is to actually do anything with it. Now, as far as I'm aware, the only thing they're actually doing is redeveloping a stand because it doesn't meet the capacity standards. I believe that's literally all they're doing, and maybe changing the pitch. But in order to do it, there's only one way in and one way out for all of the service vehicles, which means getting in and out of a stadium to actually lay down a new pitch or make a new stand is going to take longer than it would somewhere like, let's say Chelsea or something, or Man City, where there's multiple access points into the stadium. You know, it's literally just one way in, one way out for coming vehicles. It's through a housing estate. I kind of understand why it's taking so long, and to be fair, I don't really understand why it had to be changed anyway if it is for capacity reasons. Because let's be honest, Bournemouth only holds 11,000 people, and Luton held 10,500. So if you have to meet a capacity standard of 11,000 or whatever, that's fucking stupid if you ask me. But rules are rules, aren't they? And that might not be the reason. It might not be the capacity. But I do know that we are editing a stand, or at least that's how it looked. It looked like they were trying to change one of the stands. Anyway, it's Chelsea versus Luton. It's Chelsea versus Luton this Friday night, 8 o'clock kickoff on Sky. If anybody does want to watch that, I'm going to give my prediction. I'm not going to give who I think will score, perform well, blah 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 blah. But my prediction for this game, I'm going to go with a 3-0 Chelsea win. I think we've not had the greatest start to the season, but Luton have only had one game away, and it was against one of the harder teams in the division. They'll still want to fight back, and they'll want to prove that they can actually do something in this division. But I just feel like the Chelsea strike force and attacking players that they have, I know they have a lot of injuries, but I just feel like what we do have will provide them with firepower to get past Luton, who I think is still having a lot of new players coming in, trying to gel together. I think 3-0, but I don't think Luton will go down to Stamford Bridge and just sit back and just take it. I think Chelsea will perform really well. I think they'll get the 3 goals. Luton will also perform very well. It might even be a fairly even game, but I do think Chelsea will walk away with it. When we move on to the Bournemouth Spurs game at 12:30 on Saturday, again, I think Bournemouth are going to be kind of difficult to beat this season. When I did a prediction at the very end of last season, I said that Bournemouth would finish top 10. It's just a little mess around prediction I did. I think when I did the prediction a couple of months ago, I had them to get relegated. But looking at their current team, I think they'll probably finish somewhere between about 10th and 15th, around that sort of area, that midfield, that mid-table area. Not really threatened by relegation, not really threatening the top 6. I don't think there'll be any threat to anybody. But I think there'll be a few games this season where we do actually pick up a few points that are unexpected of them. But I don't think this is going to be one of them. I'm going to go with a 2-1 Spurs win. I think Bournemouth will have a really good game again, like Luton will. I just don't think they'll have what it takes in the end to stop Spurs from winning. When we move on to Arsenal-Fulham, now I know Arsenal have got a really good team. They've won both of their opening 2 games, and Fulham have Fulham have lost one of them 3-0 at home. We won the other one 1-0 away. Had a mixed match start, but I'm only going to go with a 1-0 win for Arsenal. And it's not because they've only won both their previous games by 1 goal. It's because I don't think they're that good, to be honest. I think we've got some really creative and good players in their team. I just don't think overall we perform that well as a team. Maybe I'm wrong. Shoot me down in the comments by all means. But I just feel like Arsenal will only scrape a 1-0 win against Fulham. Now moving on to Brentford Palace. This is quite a tasty one, to be fair, because Brentford have drawn and won their opening 2 games. They're sitting on 4 points as it stands. Palace have won and lost their opening 2 games. But they didn't perform badly against Arsenal by any means. And they completely dominated us at Bramall Lane last week. We had something like 25 shots or something, 24 to our like 7 or 8 or whatever. We absolutely dominated the play. We had about 70% possession. The ref seemed like he was on their side a lot. Every time he went down, he blew the whistle. But I don't like to blame the refs for the results that come in. It was our fault. We should have closed down on the left side. Nobody closed down the cross. Nobody picks up the man in the middle. It's a free touch. It's a free shot. It's a goal. It's always going to happen. You get caught on the break, you're going to concede goals. Nobody closes down Lerma in midfield, who creates the opportunity for Ayew to cross in. Edouard scores. Just nobody closes it down in that entire play. From the halfway line all the way to when the last touch goes into the net. I don't think a single Sheffield United player touches it. And Brentford just look scary. That 2-2 draw against Tottenham, pretty decent result. You got to expect teams on the first game of the season to be a little bit shaky. We've had a pre-season to warm up, but we're not fully with it. It's after your first 3 or 4 games you start seeing teams are actually going to start getting away. Now for me, Brentford, I'm sort of caught between they'll finish somewhere in the top 6 and they'll finish somewhere in the top 10. I'm just outside of the top 6 or just inside of the top 6. So naturally you'd expect me to go with a Brentford win for this one, but I'm actually going to go with a 1-1 draw. Now for Everton Wolves, I think this is the big one because both of these teams are, no offence to any supporters of either team, are pretty awful when it comes to scoring goals this season. Yes, Everton had that disallowed goal for no reason. It was a poor decision. It should have counted. Wolves have actually scored a goal against Brighton. However, it was only a consolation goal and it was against the run of play. Wolves do create a lot of opportunities and Everton, as I can tell, don't really create that many good opportunities. But neither seem to be able to score. However, at some point, I feel like Wolves will start putting away chances, and I think this will be that weekend. And I'm therefore going to go with a 2-0 Wolves victory this weekend. I think this is the season that Everton go down for me. Manchester United versus Forest, also a 3 o'clock kickoff on Saturday. Now, again, it's easy to look at them and think, oh, Man U were the dominant team, but how they performed against Wolves, they were outplayed. How they performed against Tottenham, they were outplayed. In both of their opening 2 fixtures against arguably weaker opposition, they were outplayed against both. And Forest played really well in their first game at Arsenal. They had a good comeback and they nearly got the result. They got a win against Sheffield United. Again, with the Sheffield United thing, there's a lot of defensive issues that we have, but take that away. Forest, for me, dominated the first half. We might have dominated the second half to a point, but Forest were never really out of it, and it could have gone either way. But Forest did come away with the 3 points, so they're currently sat on 4 points. And for me, I'm going to go with a Man United victory, but just like the Wolves game, I'm just going to go with a 1-0. I think it'll be a very tight affair, and they'll just have the edge over Nottingham Forest for quality in their team. Now, Brighton versus West Ham. Now, this is an exciting fixture because West Ham are just bouncing off of a 3-1 victory against Chelsea, where they, in my opinion, were the better team. They outplayed Chelsea. In midfield, Ward-Prowse created a lot of good opportunities. Paqueta, he looks dangerous. If he's still there this weekend, he looks dangerous. He's the man to go to. Antonio's still scoring goals. We've got Bowen in their team. I don't even know if he's injured. I don't know what injuries they have, but Bowen looks really good as well. Again, it's a player I'm not seeing in anybody's fantasy team yet. Brighton, as I say, Estepinian is good. Matoma is brilliant. Pedro, even Evan Ferguson, good player. These are good players that they develop. And Ciso, great player. And then we've got that defender who scored in their first game again against Luton. I can't remember his name, but he looks really good as well. So for me, I think it's easy to say Brighton and win this, but looking at the creativity that West Ham have, it's also easy to see how West Ham might stay in the game. And for me, I'm going to go with Brighton 3, West Ham 2. Burnley versus Aston Villa. Now, this is a difficult one to call because Burnley have only had one game, and that was against Manchester City, and they got outplayed, but you expect that from Manchester City. They're the best team in Europe, potentially the best team in the world. I think it's very hard to argue that there's any team currently better than Man City. You could have a shout for teams like Real Madrid. We've got players like Bellingham, and we've got players like Kroos and Modric, and you know, they score goals. I get it. They're a creative bunch, and we get good goals. We got Vinicius Junior in the team, but I think Man City they just have it. They just have everything you need to be the best team currently. And I know a lot of people might disagree with that. They might not be happy with what I'm saying, but Man City are, in my opinion, the best team in the world at the minute. So to try and compare Burnley to them in terms of a game that was played is very difficult, especially coming in as a new boy to the Premier League with new players, a manager that's never managed in the Premier League. You know, it's difficult. It's very difficult, but I think they played really well. They just didn't have what it takes to stop Man City from scoring. Aston Villa got absolutely trashed at Newcastle 5-1, and they completely annihilated Everton 4-0. So currently they've lost by 4 goals and won by 4 goals, which means it's got 0-0 written all over it. But I'm not going to go with a 0-0. I don't want to be boring like that. I'm going to go with a 2-1 Villa win. I think Villa have more firepower than Burnley, but I think Burnley they'll be alright this season. Again, they'll be like Bournemouth for me. They'll be in that sort of 10th to 15th place finish. They'll not be threatened by relegation. They'll not be threatening the top 6. It's just... But I do think Aston Villa, my dark horses for the top 4. I'm not saying they'll get it. I'm just saying they'll be my dark horses for the top 4. And I'm going to put them as 2-1 winners at Burnley. Where do I start on the next one? Sheffield United versus Manchester City. Also kicking off at 2 o'clock on Sunday, but this is on Sky. Now, I will be attending this game. We played Manchester City in the playoff in the FA Cup semi-final last season. Erling Haaland scored a goal but was disallowed. Mahrez scored a hat-trick. Mahrez isn't there anymore, but he scored a hat-trick in that game. And we were a championship side then. You'd expect us to be better now, but I feel like Man City will want it more now as it means more to them in the league. Yes, they wanted the treble, but we didn't play their entire first team against us. Hang on, give us a few minutes. Someone's at my door. Just give me a few minutes. And I just feel like at this point, Man City will just beat us. Will just dominate us. I'm just gonna say it. 5-0 Man City. I'm going 5-0 Man City. I don't think we have currently what it takes to provide the goals. We're not scoring many goals. Yes, we scored at Forest, but Forest compared to Man City, you know, we had a lot of opportunities against Forest, and I don't think we'll have that against Man City. I think we'll struggle to make 3, 4, maybe even 5 opportunities in the game, and it's gonna be one of them games where we're constantly under the cosh, and Man City are constantly at us and going at it and going at it and going at it. And I think once they break our doors down, we concede that first goal, we'll concede the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth. I'm going to go 5-0. Hopefully it's not like that. And that's not me being negative. I'm trying to be somewhat optimistic about it because I think it could be very easy for them to score 7 or 8, to be honest. Or maybe they'll score less, but I'm going to go 5-0 to Man City. But I don't think we'll just sit back and take it. I think we'll go for it. And I'd rather us go for it and concede 5, but not go for it and only concede 3. I'd rather us look like we want to be in the game rather than we'll just take it. Because if we look like we'll just take it from Man City, then when we play Man U and Liverpool and Brighton and Newcastle and anyone who's better than us, which is pretty much anybody in the division, we'll just sit back and take that as well. And you don't want to watch that. You want to see your team go for it. I'd rather get relegated from trying to not get relegated than get relegated for not trying at all. There's no point in being in the division if you're not going to try, if you're not got that ambition. We're also potentially signing Cameron Archer this week, which is not proven in the Premier League, but he looked really good at Middlesbrough last season. I don't know if he'll be signed in time for Man City. I've heard something about him taking a medical today, but the deal's not fully being put through yet, fully agreed or whatever, so I don't know how long that's actually going to take. I don't know if it'll be done in time for this game or in time for the following game at home to Everton. I don't know if it'll get done at all, but that's what I'm hearing. And then we move on to Newcastle-Liverpool. 2-1 Newcastle. There you go, that's it. Nothing else to say. No, yeah. 2-1 Newcastle. I think they'll bounce back. They had that 5-1 win against Villa. 1-0 defeat at Man City. They didn't look great against Man City, but it wasn't really a great game to watch either. It was quite a boring affair, if I'm honest. But Newcastle have what it takes. They have the money. They have the players. They have the ambition. They have the belief in themselves. They have the support. They have the entire northeastern region of England behind them, except maybe Sunderland. But, you know, they have what it takes to be a regular Champions League team. They've got Champions League football this season. I think they'll get it again next season. If they don't, they'll get at least Europa League. But I don't think Liverpool are very good. Everybody keeps saying that Liverpool aren't going to be this team they were last season, where they just finished Europa League and they'll bounce back. And I don't think they will. I think they'll get Europa League again, if I'm honest. I don't think they'll get top 4. I don't think they're amazing. I don't think they're a brilliant team, like everyone keeps saying. And I think their midfield's quite shaky. And they need to work. They need to fix that midfield up. They need to get the players in that they want. Wataru Endo from Stuttgart, I'm not saying he's a bad player, he's not. But I don't think he's the answer to make you a Champions League team. And for me, I feel like players like Isak and Wilson and Barnes and Trippier and even Anthony Gordon and Gomes, Tonali, they're good players. These are the players that create things for Newcastle and they make things happen. And I could quite easily say Newcastle win it 3-0. I could see that happening as well. But I don't want to be one of them who gets carried away and says that Liverpool will get battered, Newcastle battered. I think 2-1. I think Salah's the most likely option to get your goals for Liverpool. But I think Tonali is probably one of the signings of the season, if you ask me. Whether there's talks about him actually wanting to be there or not, it doesn't really matter. I think he's one of the signings of the season, and I think he'll be one of the best players in the division. So anyway, that is week 2 of the Fantasy Premier League. So moving on to week 3, with all of those fixtures coming up, and the table currently looking like this. Let's see where everybody is at this time next week. Thanks for watching.